Hello, it is Rachel, and I have a question I want to ask you, especially if you are raising a child with big emotions. And that question is, what did you learn from your past about big emotions? Did you learn maybe from hearing people talking about others that if a child has big emotions, they're being dramatic, or they're being weak, or they're being silly? Did you experience in your past that people were judged or even rejected? Friendships ended because someone was being too dramatic. I ask you this because your story, what you tell yourself about big emotions, based on what you learned in your past, is going to play a very big role in how you respond to your child. And it's also, believe it or not, going to play a role in how you interact with your spouse or your co-parent, whoever you are raising your big emotion child with. Because if you learn from past experiences, from past messages, from something you'd been through, if you learn that big emotions are bad or that there's a problem with them, when you see your child having some sort of dramatic response or behavior or mood, when you see this, your brain is going to interpret it as a threat or a bad thing. When that happens, you go into fight or flight. And you've probably heard me say this before, that when you are in fight or flight, you actually can't assess situations effectively. You can't see the big picture. When you're in fight or flight because you see a threat in your child's big emotions, you also can't access the part of your brain where your values live. So you're not going to be able to respond in a way that feels good. Also, when you're in fight or flight, you're not going to be able to hear what your spouse or co-parent is saying. You're not going to be open to any thoughts they have about how to raise your child with big emotions, and that can fuel disagreements. So your story has a big impact on how you respond to situations and even how you relate to the person you are raising your big emotion child with. So I do want you to think about what you learned and what you tell yourself now, or what you think about when you see your child having big emotions. I'm not even going to ask you if what you tell yourself or think about these big emotions is accurate. It almost doesn't matter if it's accurate or not. What I'm going to ask you is what you're telling yourself or what you're thinking about when you see these big emotions, is it useful? Is it allowing you to stay out of fight or flight so that you can respond with your values, so that you can assess the situation effectively and give your child what you need? And is the story you're telling yourself allowing you to be open-minded to hear what your spouse or co-parent has to say? It's really important when raising children with big emotions that we understand what our motivation comes from. If it's coming from fear based on our past, we're not going to be able to respond as effectively and interact as effectively with others. So if you want to hear a little bit more about how our story and our past impacts our relationship with a spouse or a co-parent, you can check out my recent podcast episode. Find that on my website at rachel-bailey.com/208. I'll be back again soon with more tips for you. Take care.